Fine. In the last session, these are the few points which we discussed. We discussed about uh, the Fusion application architecture. We discussed we have a three layers: Fusion applications and middleware and database. The relevant points we discussed here. The next point we discussed about enterprise structure, how it is different from multi-org, and then we just gone through few points related to Fusion security, which we call as RBAC, role-based access control, and we have a different type of roles and how those are similar to EBS, and we discussed. And in case of release 12, what are the roles, type of roles we have that we discussed. The final summary of this roles discussion is in case of up to release 11. Okay, we have four type of roles, but in 12 you don't see the role called as data role, where we have to set up for which role which data access is required. Okay, fine. So any questions on these points from anyone, please? If no questions, we can just start with the user related discussions in Fusion applications.
Lakshman, could you walk through this particular thing in brief, like the roles when it goes to 12, release 12?
Yeah, see, it's a very simple. So in release up to release 11, we have these four type of roles: job roles, duty roles, data roles, and abstract. Okay, job roles, duty roles, abstract roles are Oracle delivered roles which are seeded, but data roles will be created by system. When system will create the data role, when you create the business unit, system will create the relevant data roles. When you create the primary ledger, it will create the data roles, or else when you create the inventory organization, it will create the data roles. So how on what base it will create? Hope you will discuss in the previous session. And but when it comes to release 12, the whatever Oracle is providing as a seeded, yes, these are the three type of roles. Apart from that, normally what role system creates up to release 12 version, that similar definition we have to do through manual process, where we'll select any one of the role and we assign our business unit or general ledger to specific primary ledger to particular role. Finally, that role will assign to user. So it's similar to EBS practice. We'll have a responsibility for responsibility. Will assign the operating unit. The similar way here we are assigning the OU we are calling as BU here. The BU will assign that role will assign to the user. Then that user can have access to the functionality which is available under this role, and within that functionality, what are the transactions user going to record? They can record against this business unit. Okay, so
So,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt, Lakshman, but when it goes to MOAC, right, the same old practice, what we used to do it in EBS, we do the same thing in Fusion as well, correct?
Exactly. We'll create the security profile and we'll do it. Apart from that, we have other option also, which we called as data access. Reference data set. I think I given as a data access set, not reference data set. Reference data set. We have some other concept called as reference data set, RDS. So with this also you can manage your security. Okay, for how many BUs we need access, you can define the BU specific reference data set or common reference data set. We'll discuss when we are working on the application. Okay, one option is security profile, MOAC, right? And even in EBS also with the MOAC we can manage the operating unit access. The same way in Fusion also we have the same security profile. Apart from that, we have additional other concept called as reference data set, RDS. So with this also we'll be able to specify for how many BUs the access is required from specific user. Here user, not responsibility. Okay, we'll see those very much detail level when we start working on the application. Okay.
So, this is only role based. Suppose if they want, if user wants to practice the same old practice of using the responsibility, that is not possible anymore, right?
Responsibility concept we don't have in Fusion. Okay, everything role
Okay,
based.
so
We'll see that how the actually that role would work and all. Once we start working on that, we can understand those advanced concepts, the security profile and the reference data sets. Okay, here as of now the simple point which we have to understand is user will have access to any functionality through roles, not responsibilities. Okay, fine, done. So in today's session we can just look into these few points. So this would be the agenda. We'll talk about users in Fusion applications. So here we'll talk how many type of users we have, why, I mean, how the classification will work. We'll discuss on that. The other concept is functional setup management. Finally, we'll talk about how to create the implementation user. Okay. The first point here is users in Fusion applications. So when you talk about users in Fusion applications, so let me write here users in Fusion applications. So here in the Fusion applications, the users are classified into two types: implementation user and employee user. Okay, implementation user and employee user. In case of EBS, we create a user from system administrator responsibility or sysadmin, and we'll create employee in HRMS. That employee we can assign to the user. But here, so depending on which user type you are creating, system will allow you for the employee assignment. Okay, let's talk about implementation user. What does it mean by implementation user here? So basically, like when you are doing the fresh implementation, you can create only implementation user. Okay, so this function you can create from security console. Okay, so implementation user you can create from security console. In the previous versions, okay, the implementation user you can create from IDM up to release 11. If you want to create implementation user, that user you can create from IDM, identity manager, or you can call as OIM, Oracle Identity Manager. But from release 12, okay, from release 12, the user, if you want to create implementation user, that directly you can create from security console. The previous releases, prior to 12, you have to create user from IDM or OIM. Which user? Implementation user. And if you want to create employee user in any version, previous versions or current version, the employee user will be creating from HCM, Human Capital Management. Okay, HCM stands for Human Capital Management. Employee user means you will create employee. For that employee, you will give the user credentials. Okay. So implementation user and employee user. So when we start with implementation, first we have to create implementation user only. So with that implementation user definition, we can start working on the system. But when you create implementation user, say for example, you are creating the implementation user called as ABC. You create an implementation user. So after creating the implementation user, there won't be any option where you can associate employee with this implementation user. Whereas when you are creating the user as an employee user, that means employee user is nothing but you are creating employee. When you create employee, you will be including the user definition also. So this combination only we call as employee user. But when you talk about implementation user, just you are going to create the user. You cannot associate any employee with the user in Fusion applications. Okay, if at all you want to create the user with employee association, that you have to create from HCM only. Okay, directly you cannot create any user from the security console which can be associated with any employee definition. Okay, and functionality and finance point of view, what is the big difference between these two users? Okay, so financials point of view, so from any user you can do any configuration, but when it comes to supplier sides, Okay, supplier sites. These supplier sites, you can create supplier also from any user based on the roles which will provide. That will see more detail available when we work on the system. But just to understand in this stage, so when you take the example of this implementation user and employee user, from any user you can perform any system related configuration and process, but the restriction would be for supplier site. The supplier sites only you can create with the help of employee user, and you cannot create supplier sites from implementation user. Okay, this is only the difference you can find in the system configuration process. Otherwise these two users will have a same privileges based on the roles which you are going to assign in the system. Okay, so this is a simple point we have to understand. So when we start with this, our just actual system practice also, first we'll be creating the implementation user. Why we cannot start with the employee user definition? If you want to create the employee user, we require legal entity. Okay, we require legal entity and we require business unit. If you need business unit, for the business unit definition we require primary ledger also. That means all these setups should be ready in the system. But at the time of employee user creation time, system will look for only these two definitions. You have to specify the legal entity and business unit. Without completing the legal entity and business unit definitions, you cannot create the employee user. So when we start with a fresh implementation, so we have to go and create all the legal entities, primary ledgers and business units. Then we'll be able to create the employee user. For that reason, when you start with a fresh implementation, all the time we'll create the implementation user. Then we can start doing the setups. Once the required setups are ready in the system, then we'll go and create the employee user in the system. From that time onwards, we'll be proceeding with employee user, which will have a complete privileges in the system environment based on the roles which we are going to assign to the user. Okay, just this is a simple point we have to understand when we talk about the users in the Fusion applications. Any questions on this, please?
So, Lakshman, if we are doing the conversion, let us consider supplier and supplier sites conversion. Is it mandatory that we need to have an employee user?
Yes, employee user you should have, and since you are just pointing out some event, I mean the process. So if you are doing the supply related conversions, you have to do it from procurement agent. Okay, we have a buyer in EBS, right? The same buyer, the term they given here as a procurement agent. Okay, procurement agent. What we have to do is the employee user you have to convert as a procurement agent. Okay, the employee user, which employee user is defined as a procurement agent in the system, from that procurement agent only you can create the supplier site. Say you have an employee user 1, employee user 2. Employee user 1 is defined as a procurement agent. From that employee user 1 only will be able to create the supplier site, not from employee user 2. If it is going to be just employee user, okay, system won't allow you to create the supplier site. The employee user should be classified as a procurement agent also. So that's how the dependency will work. Another point here is implementation user you cannot convert as a procurement agent. Only employee user you can convert as a procurement agent. Fine. Any questions here, please?
This one question. If you say this is a implementation user cannot be converted. If it's in after this go live working there, so can this user we have to create a new user for an employee user, or can we use the same implementation user, or the system will detect the same user ID used for two like a implementation user and employee user?
See, when you start with a fresh implementation, we'll have one implementation user and we'll complete all the setups. And since that is going to be test environment, we'll create one dummy employee user. Okay, for that user will give all the privileges so that you can classify as a procurement agent and will be able to complete the including supplier side definition. That's how it will work. When it comes to production, there also first will create the implementation user. Then the once the users definitions are available, I mean to say employee definitions are available from HCM. If you are going to implement HCM, human capital management, so there you can, once all the employee definitions are ready, you can select any one of the, use any one of the employee. For that employee you can associate all the roles and you can complete your setup related configuration. Later you may remove all the roles which are provisioned to that user. So that is the approach we follow. System can easily can identify whether user is implementation user or employee user. When you talk about employee user, there will be a person number and all. For implementation user, there won't be any person number identification in the system process.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Lakshman, one question from mind also. Can you tell us, like, if it's a new, fresh implementation going on in Oracle, who will be working on these, user fusion applications, like a financial guy or like a security guy?
No, finance guy only. Definitely. Once implementation is done, they'll come up with the actual process of security. Will be administrating the user part and all. At the time of implementation, so functional guys will be involving. Okay, it's we have a finance, SCM, HCM means definitely somebody will take initiative based on their experience or interest, whatever you call. Okay, initially at the time of implementation, functional consultants only will take initiative of working on this user definitions and all, and further configuration also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Lakshman.
Another point.
Can you give us?
Yeah, one second. It completely depends who is the client and all, how they are going to manage this privileges. Say there could be some admin guy from their end. They may say any user related privileges and all. You have to contact so and so person. The initial credentials you may get from so and so point of contact. From there we'll take initiate and we'll start working on it. Okay, but
so you're saying like in Oracle, like, and it always depends on the client, but
no. See, the point here is, so once the client subscribe this cloud, they'll be providing, they'll create one user and they'll be sharing to the client. Then they can have the control on that, or they can share the same credentials to all the consultants who are going to work on the project. Ideally, that happens. They'll be sharing that credentials which they get from Oracle. So based on that, they'll create their own users and then they'll start with the system configuration.
Right, but the thing is, Lakshman, past in my experience, and I'm sorry, like I'm bringing this word back again, SAP. Normally, the client or the organization does not like to give everything to one same person, who is expert on specific skill. For instance, you're saying, for instance, in SAP, I used to be like in financials. They never given me like a basis work to do, like securities. So we always do like financials. So are you just saying like in an Oracle, it can be given to us? Yes. Because we have functional and finance both?
Yes, it will be given to the consultants, because when you are working on implementation, we should have full privileges. Okay, that is the reason they'll be providing you take even EBS cases also, or even in cloud also, that in Fusion also, that remains same. They'll give initial access. After implementation is done, they'll take that control. Somebody will have a just admin part, playing admin role they'll be playing. Then any further users you require, definitely you have to contact. There could be internal process of where the user request will be raised, that will be routed through approvals. Once that is done, finally admin guy will be creating the user and they'll provide the credentials to requested user. That's how it happens, requested employee. So that's how the process works. It completely totally depends on how they want to manage their part. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Lakshman, can you give me in a high level view, legal entity and business unit from EBS point of view, or Oracle Cloud point of view?
Legal entity and business unit, same like.
At least legal entity.
I'm sorry, I'm not getting the point you are asking.
No.
Ganesh, what
No.
you're trying to understand?
No. Basically, see, a lot of times these two are interchangeably used, right? Legal entity and business unit. But especially like in this case, you're specifically putting two things into, legal entity, business unit, and primary ledger is definitely a different thing.
I got your point. I got your point. The point here is, see, say for example, you have 5 entities. The 5 entities you can define in the system as 5 legal entities. The 5 legal entities may be your 5 business units also. That is a one case.
Okay.
If that is a scenario, anyway, you have to create two definitions. Naming convention can be one same, or else you may have one legal entity, and under that entity you may operate the business in the multiple locations, or where you have multiple line of businesses. For each line of business, you can have separate business unit, or for each location of business to segregate and maintain the data, and where you can have a security and transaction process, rest of reporting and all, you can have a different business units. Okay. So that's a totally different. Some same legal entities can be defined as a business units if that is the case how they are operating, or else there could be one legal entity, under that there could be a number of business units, or else there may be n number of legal entities and you may have one business unit, under that you will be having n number of balance and segment values. Okay. So this is all about how the solution is going to be for the client as per their business requirement, and how they want to have a data access and security policies, etc. within the organization. Okay.
No. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. One more just before you move on next topic. That just out of curiosity, I'm asking that in Oracle release
release
e-business suite.
Yeah.
In e-business suite.
Yeah.
So in that we have human resources. Sometimes the company they use. Sometimes they won't implement the HR. They use purchasing, and there is a shadow. So is the same case in Fusion 2?
Same.
Okay.
Same is applicable here. You may not, your client may not subscribe for HCM, but still they'll give you the basic access where you can go and create the employee users. Since you don't have subscription, you are not allowed to maintain all the HR related process and all these. All you cannot do, but basic employee user definitions you can do, which can be used in any one of the business process.
So same from the purchasing responsibility.
Same. This what wherever we have dependency, the dependency related basic functionality can be used.
Okay.
That is there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions here, please? I'm sorry, I just I'm muted. Yeah, please, you can go ahead with your question.
Yeah, hi Lakshman. In one pod, there would be, will it be only one implementation user?
You can create a number of implementation users. See, when we are, say, take case as we are going to implement financials and HCM, PPM, SCM. So in this case, so as for finance, we can create one implementation user, for HCM another implementation user, for PPM different, SCM different, or else we can use one implementation user and we can go and create. It's all about you want to access the system with the same user or different users. That won't make any difference. Okay, or else whatever Oracle provides, the same you may use for any one of this implementation. Okay, that won't make any difference. Take example of EBS. In EBS, okay, once we have a credentials from the data DBA, what we'll do, you may use the same credit. Normally we'll create our own users, right? You may create one user and you can tell to the other team, just use this user, or else they know very well how to create their own users and how to start working on the system. It totally depends how they want to just go with the same user or different users. So based on that can be decided.
So do we have the seeded implementation user one?
No, seeded, no, they'll create and they'll be giving. Here you don't get any seeded. They'll create and they'll be giving with the cloud.
Okay, and for the employee user perspective, my role should be associated with the employee user, is it?
Exactly. Which roles you require to do the implementation, the roles you have to assign to employee user, or for any user, for what process or what areas of privileges they require, accordingly will be assigning the roles.
Okay.
Yeah, fine, done. So any other questions here, please?
One clarification.
Your voice is very low. Soheb, can you look at your system? Any chance you can increase the volume? Your voice is very low, Soheb. Still same.
Now it's audible.
No, same. Remain same.
Hello. Now.
The same. You just go ahead. I'll try, please.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to know regarding the legal entity and the business unit. Like we can have like in a single legal entity, we can have n number of business units. Just a clarification.
Yes, exactly. We can have.
Okay.
Say, for example, you're running the business in India, and you'll have one registration. And in the different cities you are operating your business, and you have a business requirement where the city wise you want to secure the data, and you have to set a transaction control the city wise data, and you want to prepare the reports city wise. So in that case, for each city you may have one business unit in the system. That's how you can map your business into system. So but all will be just running under same registration, same entity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fine.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. So fine. If no questions, we can move to the next point here. Any questions from anyone, please? Okay, no questions. Good.
Hi, I'm Pawan here.
Yeah, Pawan, please.
Can you give me an example of?
Pawan, please go ahead.
Yeah. Can you give me an example of more than one legal entity and only one business unit?
More than one legal entity and one business unit. Say, for example, they have a five registrations, and when they have five registrations, say they are running the five different businesses also. So in that case, what I'll do is I'll create five legal entities, and I'll create five balance and segment values for each business one. But in the system process, I'll create only one BU. Okay, I'll create only one BU, and we'll complete the setups. From the same BU, users will be able to record the transactions for any business, and we'll be using the offset option. Is it clear?
Yeah, thank you.
Fine. These are the very generic practices which you see in the EBS also. Okay, so fine, done. Okay, we'll just move on to the next topic here. Functional Setup Manager, FSM. Setup Manager. Okay, FSM. Just for comparison, okay, I'm not taking exactly this is what we have in EBS. Just for comparison, we have one setup in GL which allows us to create the primary ledger, secondary ledger, reporting ledger, many other configuration. Okay, so that is we call as ASM, right? In GL EBS we have ASM, Accounting Setup Manager. Accounting Setup Manager, ASM. By using ASM, you can do the setups. You can create the primary ledger, you can create the reporting, secondary ledger, and intercompany ledger configuration also you can do from this place. Okay, not only that, we have a user interface, we have a connectivity where you directly can create the BZs, operating units also. We have some user face connectivity from ASM. That means this is a place where we can do multiple task related configuration in EBS case. But this is very limited to few setups. Okay, we cannot complete all the application related configuration. In case of EBS, what we do is, if you want to do the AP configuration, you have to go to AP responsibility, GL related configuration from GL, from AR. For AR responsibility, you have to go. This is how you have to be switching from one to other responsibility to complete the relevant configuration. But in Fusion applications, all the setups, any application related setup, you can complete from functional setup manager. By using the functional setup manager, you can complete any application related configuration. So if you want to do any setups by using the functional setup manager, first you have to create the project. You have to create the implementation project. Okay, without creating the implementation project, you cannot complete all the setups for any one of your area which you are working. And before we get into this functional setup manager, we'll see the few terms which you have to understand. Here we have a, say for example, we have take example, same you take example here. When we talk about this financials, HCM, PPM, SCM, as per functional setup manager, this financials we call as one offering, and HCM we call as offering. Okay, this also we call as offering, and each and everything what are the relevant applications will be grouping. Okay, those areas of application are relevant, which will define the specific business process. Okay, that we call as offering. So financials, HCM, PPM, SCM, all we call as offering. If you take example of financials, within the financials we have a different modules: GL, AP, AR, CM, FA, and some other applications also we have. So as per functional setup manager, okay, financials, HCM, PPM, these we are calling as offering. Within the offering, what are the modules we have? Those we call as options. We call as option. So in financial offering, say we have 5 options. Just remember this terminology. Okay, offering means so some group of applications which are relevant to the specific business process or areas of the business operations. Okay, and option means specific module. Instead of calling as application or module, here the naming convention they given as a option. Now when we are going to work on functional setup manager, what we have to do is, first we have to enable the offerings. First we have to enable offerings. So when you are going to do the implementation for any one of client, so first for which offerings the client taken the subscription, based on that, within that instance we have to enable the offerings. And along with that offering, say for example you enable financials offering, and but client taken the license say only for these 3 modules, GL, APR. So in that case we'll be enabling the offering called as financials, and within the financials offering will be enabling the options called as only these 3, GL, APR. So when you do this enabling process for offerings and options, whatever the offerings and options are enabled, against those offerings and options only you will be able to create the implementation project. Let me write here. First we have to enable offerings and options. Then you'll be able to create the implementation project against that. Take simple example. In case of EBS, if you want to create the primary ledger, you have to get ready with the 4 components. Anyway, calendar we have to create, currency we have to enable, chart of accounts we have to design, and accounting method, the succeeded one we can use or else you may modify, and that one you can use as a part of primary ledger definition. If you take example of enabling the currency, all currencies values will be available in the every fresh instance as a seeded currency values, but which currency you want to have as a part of your primary ledger you have to enable. If you don't enable the currency, that won't be available at the time of primary ledger creation. The same logic is applicable here. When you are going to create your implementation project, you have to select, you are going to implement which offerings and within those offerings which options. For that, first you have to enable. The enabled offerings and options only will be available to create the project. Okay, so after creating the project, what happens is, so say for example we selected financial offering, we enabled financial offering, and we enabled financial related these options, say these 5 options. So by selecting this offering and these options, when you create the implementation project, automatically system will create the task list. System creates task list. Task list is nothing but the setups. If you are going to do, say for example, for AP, if you are going to do the setups, what setups will do in case of EBS? We'll set payable system setup, financial options, payables option, distribution sets, payment terms, right? Supplier and bank account definitions, payment process profiles, and payment format. We complete the basic and advanced depending on the requirement, but let's talk about basic configuration which we do. So all the setups, whatever we perform as a part of AP configuration, okay, so all the setup related task the system will create, which we call as task list. In case of EBS, that we are calling as function. By using specific function, you can complete specific configuration setup, or you can do the transaction process. Instead of calling here as a function, we are calling as a task. So it will group all the tasks that we call as task list. So say for example, you are going to create implementation project, you selected financials and you selected only accounts payables. So to implement accounts payables, what are the setups you have to complete? All the setup system will create and it will maintain under the implementation project which you are creating. That's how system will create the task list. Once system will create the task list, what we have to do is you can assign specific offering or option or specific task list, specific, or else say specific tasks to team members. Okay, so once you create the project, at the time of project creation, project we have to assign to specific resource. Ideally we assign the project to project manager, and after creating the project, system will create the list of setups which need to be configured to implement selected offerings or options. So those you can assign to the team members. For finance consultant, you may assign financials offering, and or else if you are going to have a multiple resource for finance implementation, you may assign AP to one resource, AR to another resource, CM to another resource, FA to other resource, or else only AP to multiple resource. There could be some, if it is going to be huge implementation for a specific client, so maybe you can see the multiple consultants will be working for one module implementation. In that scenario, only one option, one module you may assign to multiple resource. So once you assign that a particular offering or option or specific task to specific team member, they'll have an option of updating the progress of their work which they are performing against the offering or option or task list. Okay, just I'll take you through the few more points, then we can start discussing on this. Fine. So first we have to enable the offerings and options, then we'll create the implementation project only against enabled offerings and options. Then system will create the task list, nothing but list of setups it will generate within the project. Then so which offering and which options or which setups which consultant is going to perform, you can assign against their name. Then once that is done, they can start doing the configuration. The consultants can start doing the system configuration. So as whenever they complete some part of configuration, or else whenever they start working on that, they can change the progress of the offering. They can change the status of the offering or options or tasks. Say the finance consultant started working on the financials offering, then they can update the status for financials as started working on that, say work in process. Once we complete the particular task, specific setup or particular module or entire offering, we can update the status. Okay, we'll start with the system configuration. You can update the status of configuration, whatever we are doing. And whenever you update the status against the specific offering or option or a task multiple tasks, based on that status, system will keep tracking the progress of the project. Okay, we can track progress of the project. So along with this, within this function setup manager, okay, you can use for rapid implementations also. Rapid implementations. Rapid implementation nothing but Oracle provides spreadsheets. Within the spreadsheets, instead of going and doing the setups in the system directly, you can enter the relevant data based by following the format and fields of rapid implementation spreadsheets, which are predefined by Oracle, and you can load that spreadsheet into the system. That's how system will create the configuration automatically. Not only that, rapid implementation, you can move the setups from one instance to another instance by using the concept called as configuration packages. Okay, we have a concept called as configuration packages. By using this concept, you can copy the complete setups from one instance and you can move to other instance. And based on what are the setups you did against specific project, you will be able to generate the reports. Okay, reports related to setups, setup related reports. Okay, reports on setups. What are the setups you completed, how much percentage of setups you completed against your project. So the relevant reports also you can run, you can get more information on that. Still, how many setups are pending, how much percentage of work is pending in terms of system configuration. So these are all the activities we can perform as a part of functional setup manager. If you want to do any setups in the Fusion applications, we'll do all the setups from functional setup manager. If you want to start with the system configuration, which modules you are going to implement, that you have to enable with the term called as, with the concept called as offerings and options. Then by selecting offerings and options, we'll create the project. Okay, by selecting, will as a part of implementation project creation, we have to select offerings and options. Then based on the selected offerings and options, system will create the task list. Nothing but it will list out all the setups to implement those selected modules. What are the setups we have to complete? Then we can assign to the team members. So this is not mandatory task, this is optional. Okay, it's a mandatory system, any automatically will create the task list. You may assign the specific task or offering or option to specific team members, or else without assigning you can inform them to start working on the configuration. They'll start working on the configuration, the team will start working on the configuration. Update the status of the configuration, this is also optional. If they update, the project progress can be tracked, otherwise, so just manually they have to verify. That's how they'll come to know, or else the consultant should report to the team, I mean the project manager or somebody who will be looking after the project related configuration and implementation. So here, out of this list, this assigning offerings or option tasks to team members optional, and updating the status against the configuration, whatever they're doing, that is optional. If this is option, if it is going to be, if you are not going to update the status, you cannot track the progress of the project, how much percentage of tasks you completed. Okay, and other tasks which you can perform within this functional setup manager are rapid implementation. Oracle is providing the spreadsheets, we'll see that in our classes, I'll take you through that. So you don't need to create primary ledgers, business unit, those can be created automatically based on rapid implementation spreadsheet, but we'll see in our classes how to create through manual process as well as by using the rapid implementation approach. And configuration packages to move the setups from one instance to another instance, which is a simple task. And reports, where you can run the reports to understand how many setups are completed, still how many are pending, how many not yet started. All this you can see as a part of this function setup manager. Now you can just raise your questions to, if you need any clarification to understand more about this functional setup. Once we get into the system, that would be more clear, but based on the points whatever we discussed here, you can go ahead with your questions.
Lakshman, this is Ahmed. Thanks for explaining so far. So I understood like the first part, but what is this rapid implementation? I understand the configuration package is simply like you doing a replica, like, you know, from one system to, right? What is the rapid implementation?
Rapid implementation means Oracle provides spreadsheets, okay, predefined spreadsheets.
Okay.
So within that, you can specify, say for example, you are going to create the primary ledger, just give the name. So you can just specify how many periods you require into your calendar. You can give the specification, which segments you require for each segment, which segment values you want to maintain, how many business units you are going to have, how many legal entities you have in your business as per solution design. So those all you can keep in the spreadsheet only. If you take example of system process, say I want to create some segment, I have to go with a very lengthy navigation, right? I have to just go to the project. I have to select particular function or say task. I have to click on. I have to click on create. I have to enter the values. I have to click on save. Instead of doing these multiple actions to come just to fill some value with a rapid implementation, everything just you can provide in the spreadsheet in one go. Everything system will load into the system and it will complete the definitions.
So these templates, predefined one, can be customized as well?
No. However, just these Oracle is providing based on the data structure how we have in Oracle, or what are the process you follow to create certain definitions in the system by following the standard functionality. Based on that, these templates Oracle is providing. We cannot customize.
Is it like a data loader?
Not data loader. So we can have it. See, we know the data loader templates we can have, but in the data loader templates, it's not predefined, right? Data loader templates you can have which are empty, and you have to count and you have to come up with a logic. Okay, first field, second field, third field. You should have your own calculation. But when you look at rapid implementation spreadsheets, you will have all the fields. When you open your application, how you see the field, the name, description, period, etc. However, you see the same fields will be given within this. We know the concept called as Web ADI in EBS, right?
Right.
If you open the Web ADI, the application reference fields we will be able to see. The similar way these spreadsheets you can looks like.
So I mean, we can download these spreadsheets from the
instance.
UI.
From the instance only we can. Within the instance, there's all the spreadsheets are available. We'll go through this process. Okay. We'll download and we can fill with the data and we can load it. Automatically system will create your primary ledger, business units, okay, value set related values and all the information.
I think in EBS called accelerator.
Accelerators, it's a complete solution. In case of EBS, yes, we have a some part of solution from Oracle which we call as accelerators. That's a separate division. What they do is they'll just user has to they'll provide the tool, the accelerator tool. They have to input all the data in that some user interface. Okay, all the setups they'll put into specific tool, accelerator tool. Once the DBA will run, they'll perform the run automatically. All the setups will be moved to targeted instance, and those would be industry and country specific. And automatically system will complete the basic configuration based on that for which country and which industry. And further additional setups need to be done by the functional team. That's how the client start using. This approach is very limited. This is limited. These setups are very much limited. It's a similar, but we cannot compare with that. Okay. For everything we don't have, but which are very much primary and which will save the too much of time of manual definitions, and for those areas they given this rapid implementation approach. So with this approach you can fast track just the rapid approach, you will be able to complete the setups. Okay, we'll see that. So any other questions on this, please?
Rapid implementations are there for PPM also?
For all the applications we have.
All the applications.
Yeah.
Hi Lakshman, this is Chandrasekhar.
Yeah, Chandrasekhar, please.
At the fourth step, wherein you are assigning offerings and options to the team members, basically the task list will be a default task list with all the menu options, like it would be with all the privileges, all the options. If we want to, if we want to remove, then as you said in your previous session, like there is no menu exclusion over here in Fusion, so we have to go and remove the tasks manually.
Yeah, the point here is these when we talk about function setup manager, these are not at all related to your user related process. From function setup manager you cannot create one transaction also. These are completely related to configuration, will be handling as a consultant. So that is the reason here I am mentioning team members, means consulting team, project team. Okay, here.
Okay.
So any consultant can have access based on their responsibilities. They'll go ahead with their configurations, and also here such kind of requirement we may not come across. When we talk about users, for users we'll have a different roles and process. Okay, there we can just remove and all we can manage. But here also system will create task list. Task you want to assign to, you can specify that option will come.
Okay, thank you.
Hi Lachman, Naveen here.
Yeah, Naveen, please.
Can we enable the task later on? Means suppose we gone on prod or UAT and we need some other task which is missed out, or
yeah.
So can we enable it later?
Yeah. The point here is not task. We enable always offerings and options only. Task we never. Task will be part of options. Say you enable AP. Within the AP, whenever you enable AP related, all task system will generate. Okay, there is no option to enable the task, so only options. If you enable AP related, all task system will generate. You no need to go and add additional task.
No, I mean to say, suppose in AP there are 10 tasks, right?
Okay.
In 10 tasks, I performed 8 tasks, and I thought 2 tasks is not required for me. So later on,
you don't need to do anything with that. See, take simple example. You have access to accounts payable super user, and you are working on setups. So whatever you think required, that will do it. Rest what will do? Even if you have access, just will ignore them. If require, you in future you may use that function definition as per the business requirement, or else you may just create the custom menu to have give the access to relevant setup related. Here also, to have access to function setup manager, we have a separate role. Within that you can do the customization, you can modify. That's how you can give, but ideally we don't do anything for this function setup manager related. We'll give all the privileges. So based on the which user is responsible for which task, they'll be working on that. Okay. Offering and option level only you can manage.
Lakshman, so line number 60, assign offering option, and then the last one you said task to team members.
Yeah.
Suppose me, Lakshman, Praveen, Zoeb, all working for financial AP. Okay. And have the same privilege. Can we just not have in a group, like task to the group, instead of individually giving a task to team members?
See, we have it like you can give individual also. You can give individual also. See, for example, AP we can assign to all, for example, or else AP we can assign to one, and specific task can be assigned to multiple resource, multiple team members, or else for multiple resource you can AP you can assign to multiple resource, but specific task can be assigned to one resource. In that case, by default for all the tasks, same resource will get defaulted, but you can go and remove other team members, okay, for the specific task, and you can assign to specific resource.
That's yes. So when you say specific resource, but let's suppose we have 4 resources doing or working in the same functional area, AP.
Yeah.
So can we just not combine in a group these 4 people and just specify this group or whatever list under the name?
You cannot make the group
for that group.
You have to assign one by one only. There is no option like we can just.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
And Lakshman, this is Arvind. The enabling line number 57, enable offerings and options.
Yeah.
Under the SaaS model, when you take the subscription, Oracle should enable those for you, right? And also create an implementation user for you, for the client, I mean to say.
No, see, you may not see as they are enabled. Just they'll give you the product. They'll set required controls from their end, and they'll be giving access. So along with whatever the subscription you are taking, some other offerings also would be available by default in instance. Take example of EBS product. You take in the license for finance and SCM, but when your DB is going to install the product in the server, by default you will have access to many other products, right? Even you can go and do the configuration. Even you can start working on that. When you have some issues, Oracle is not going to help you for the product where you don't have license. The same way here also, so they'll give you the access where you can go and start doing the configuration, but they will limit the access for the usage in the cloud. So that is the reason many offerings will be available in this also, but you'll be enabling whatever you subscribe. It's a simple task. Just we'll go and select it. Okay.
Yeah.
The reason, see, you may do this implementation phase by phase. Okay. So in the first phase, you are not going to use so and so offering. For example, just for simple example, I am taking. In that case, if that is available anyway, if that is going to be available, you are not going to use it. So in that scenarios, it's not required. So whatever right now you are going to use for our implementation project creation, those you can enable, you can use. And again, anytime you can go and enable any offering and option. So that's how it works. Anytime you can go and enable offerings and options. Accordingly, those will be available for project creation. Once project is created, even if you are going to disable, there won't be any impact on the project, because based on the project creation, system will create the task list. You'll be able to perform the setups.
And the initial implementation user is created by Oracle before handing over to the client.
Yes, correct.
Then once clients receives that, then further users, they have to create themselves.
Exactly.
So when Oracle provides the instance or access to the client, what all do they get it? They get the link, they get the implementation user, they also get the employee user or anything?
No. See, just now we discussed, when you talk about employee user, we have to include legal entity and business unit.
Oh, wow. Okay. Got it.
So it's not possible where they can maintain our definitions.
Yeah, that's right. So you get the link, you get the implementation user.
Just you will get a URL and login. You can just log in and you can start working on it. Since you're knowing about the product, how to manage. Yeah. Thanks.
Lakshman, can I make a quick point of this?
Yeah. Any other questions here, please?
Just a quick observation.
Yeah.
So when we usually subscribe to an Oracle license, cloud license.
License not. The point here is it's not license. It's just subscription only. You are not going to take license. License is totally different, which is applicable for on-premise.
Understood. So when we subscribe, we get a subscription email. It's called a provisioning email. What we get is a Fusion link. Like you said, it is for the service. So typically with every implementation, you get a test instance and a prod link. Depending on other offerings, you might get three, but you get a link, basically a URL, and you get the OID, Oracle Oracle Implementation Manager, that access. Once you get that access, I think we have to go ahead and provision the implementation user accounts and the Fusion user accounts in current. So what we get in the provisioning email is just a link and the OIM access. That's what I've seen.
Yeah, the same I am talking about. It's not like OIM, just that is application implementation consultant. That is a role will be mapped with the user which you get from Oracle. That will give all the privileges where you can go and do any kind of, you will have a full access. That point also I am going to discuss in today's session itself. So that's nothing but implementation user creation. So there I'll talk about which roles will be getting the user from Oracle. Okay. Basically we'll get two instances. Okay. One is a development instance, which you can treat as a test instance. Other one is prod. For those two, they will be giving the URLs and login credentials. Whatever the user they are going to share with you, that user will have all the privileges. So just to talk about it, will have access. The users will be for those users, they will assign the roles called as application implementation consultant, IT security manager, and employee roles. These roles would be enough to start working on the implementation process. Anyway, those we are going to discuss now. Okay, we'll talk about we'll get a login credentials to the instance, a simple URL and credentials. That user will have all the privileges. Because of which roles, anyway, we are going to discuss on that. Okay. So any other questions here, please?
Lakshman, Arvind again quickly. So when you said we get two instances, right, from Oracle, one is test and another is production.
Correct.
So I would assume release 12, when we do the implementation, you first set up everything in the test it everything, then migrate into production. So we are going to do the same thing here.
Same. That is a purpose why Just they provide for later anytime you can just clone it with the help of Oracle only, or else you can use it as a just normal test environment. Same
so the configuration package I can leverage in Fusion to take all the configurations automatically from the test instance. Once it's passed, you take it out from the test instance, then you put the same thing into production. So the configuration package, can you do the slice and dice? Like I want to do certain functionality, only certain options or something like that, or you don't have any option, you run a script, it gets everything?
No script. It's all about this request you'll be submitting. So we have a different options. See here, what you can do is when we are going to move the setups, when you are going to export, the process wise all the setups will export. It will create the file that will upload into another instance. In the process, when you are doing this configuration packages, if you want to ignore few setups, those you can go and select it, but those should not have any dependency setups. Anyway, that system also will restrict when you try to ignore those setups. Okay. If you want to move specific module related setups, you have to create project accordingly. Okay. Say for example, you are going to implement these modules. You are going to implement these modules, these 4 offerings: financials, HCM, PPM, SCM. So you can create the one project for these 4 offerings, or else for each offering you can create separate project. Okay, here one point is very important. When you say project, just to manage the setups, that's all. Just to manage the setups and to track the progress. You can create the 4 projects. When you create the 4 projects, then you'll be able to move the setups offering wise. But again, we have to understand the dependency. Here out of this, first which one you have to move? Okay, definitely HCM. Okay, HCM. And again, see what Oracle it is. When we are working on any offering, say for example, we are going to work on SCM. When you are working on SCM, what are the setups required? So here, even for in case of SCM, primary ledger and all definitions, business units we require. Even if you are going to load SCM, our financial related primary ledger business units also will be part of this offering, even for as a part of this. That's how the dependency related setups they given within the specific offering. So but we should understand when we are going to do the different offering as a different projects, the sequence also we have to follow when you are loading the data. But normally if you have a plan of moving the setups from one instance to another instance, we'll create multiple offering as a one project only. That would be the best practice. If you go with a different for each offering separate project creation to manage your setup part when you are loading, so in the process of the loading and some dependency may fail somewhere, that everything will get disturbed. If you have a plan of moving setups, go with one project for multiple offerings. That's it.
Yeah, in today's world we have third-party configuration tools, right? Like Config Snapshot, which gives you very dynamic selection. Like implementation users who are knowledgeable, they can pick and choose and dependencies and the different levels of setups. So this looks a little different than that. Looks like you are taking a lump and moving it into the production.
That's it. Here we don't get many options. You can see the list of the setups which are going to be exported, and if you think which is something like optional, which really is not required as a part of system configuration, that you can deselect so that relevant setups cannot be exported into that zip file. Okay, it won't give that flexibility which you are referring.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a basic process.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah. Say something as is. However, you have set up only setup data. As is you can export. That same you can import into, upload into targeted instance. We'll see that process also. Fine. Any other questions here, please? If no questions, we can move on to the next topic.
Lakshman, like once we get the auto generate the task list, do we have the option? We can say mandatory to identify which are the tasks are mandatory and which are
no. We no need to identify. Even within the system also you'll be finding that specification. Okay, they'll give the star mark over there which says okay, this task is mandatory to perform. And another part is almost all the setups will be in the sequence which need to be performed.
Thank you.
Yeah, fine, thanks. You can see like they'll be clearly mentioning which task, which setup is mandatory, which is optional. In case of EBS, if you open the navigator, there is no some information which says this is mandatory and this is optional. Okay, but here you will be able to find it. Okay, any other questions here, please? We'll see that these all we'll see detail level. Before we get into that, just I'm trying to just share some information so that we can get ready to understand what we are going to do. Okay, the same process also will be following. We'll enable offering, then we'll create project, it will create, then we'll assign optionally, then we'll start with the system configuration, and we'll start updating the setup related progress, setup related status, and that can be tracked as a project progress. And apart from that, this is what we can do as a part of FSM, functional setup manager. Okay, so what are the setups you do? All the setups you have to do from project only. Few setups you can do outside of the project, but it's recommended to all the setups from implementation project. The reason, there are some setups which you cannot do outside of the project. As a mandatory you have to do from the implementation project. Which setups are those, how we can easily identify, that we'll be discussing once we start working on the application related process. Fine, the next point here is implementation user creation. Okay, so implementation user. So when I talk about implementation user, so for the implementation user we create from security console. Okay, so create implementation user from security console. If it is a previous version, in case of previous version, we'll create the implementation user from IDM, identity manager, or say OAM. But now we are going to work on latest version. So in these versions they just changed the place from where we create implementation users, and many other security related points also they change. We'll go through that. So we'll create the implementation user from security console. Okay, once you create the, after creating the implementation user, we have to assign the roles. Say assign roles to implementation user. Now the point here is which roles we have to assign to implementation user. We have to assign the roles called as application implementation consultant, and other role is, we'll talk about these roles, IT security manager, and we have to assign another role called as employee. Okay, primarily these three roles we have to assign to implementation user. Okay, implementation user, so we can start working as a consultant on this application. So why we have to assign application implementation consultant role to this or implementation user? So this role will give the access to FSM, function setup manager. So this application implementation consultant role will give the access to function setup manager so that you can complete all these setups. And why we require IT security manager role? This IT security manager role will give us the privileges to security console. From security console only we can create the users and roles assignment and custom roles creation, some admin part. Okay, admin task we can perform from security console. If you want to give the access to any user for the security console, you have to assign the role called as IT security manager role to the user, and employer role will give as access to submit some requests. Okay, requests, any process related requests or reports, any if you want to run any reports. Okay, and those you can do here. The same request only you majorly call as jobs. In case of EBS, we have a request and request set. The same here, the named as a job and job set. Okay, so these are very basic roles which we have to assign to the implementation user. Even when you get user from Oracle also, the user will be getting with these role privileges only. Okay, in the same way we can create our own user and we can assign these three roles. So any questions on this, please? So first we'll create implementation user from security console and we'll assign these three roles. Once we assign these three roles, the user will have a required privileges to work on the system as a consultant. Then we can have access to FSM and we can perform all these activities as we discussed. Then if you want to create the new users from that user, you will have access to security console. There you can create the users and you can manage the user part. And for that user, what are the roles we have to assign as per the requirement you can assign. And if at all you want to create the custom roles as per business requirement, yes, you can do that. And employee role will give the access to many other functions, but primarily let's try to understand this major functions. So with employee role, the user will be able to have access to the page from where the user can run the reports or jobs or job sets. Okay.
Hi Lakshman, when we are talking the users here,
yeah.
So users is the it can be an implement user creation or it can be an employee user creation.
I am talking about only implementation user. I am talking about implementation user. The same roles you can assign to employee user also. But here now we are limiting our discussion to implementation user, not employee user. Employee user you cannot create directly. That we'll discuss later. So in the fresh environment, we can start only with implementation user. Okay. Say for example, you have one employee user called as XYZ. If you want to give all the privileges to this XYZ employee user, just go and assign these three roles. That's all. From XYZ user, you will be able to do all the system related configuration. For any user, you can assign these three roles, which will provision to the system to do the required configuration as a consultant. Any questions here, please?
Same role is given to PM also?
Same role?
Is given to project manager also? Means assign application implementation consultant is also applicable for project manager?
For project manager, you have a separate role, application implementation manager, but consultant will have privileges more than the manager. Certain limitations will be there for managers. So if the manager required access to FSM with full privileges, then you can assign the application implementation consultant. With certain restrictions, we have a other role called as application implementation manager, where the major focus would be the progress of the project, where they'll be able to track the progress of the project in terms of system configuration related progress. Okay, you can assign to any user. Just it's all about for what they need access. Some user require access to FSM where they can create the project, they can start work on the configuration. You can assign this role. And if you want to allow some user to work on some admin part, they can create users and they can assign the roles and they can create the custom roles. In that case, you can assign this IT security manager role to that user. And if you want to allow them to run the reports, you can assign the role called as employee. This is the purpose why we have these roles. You can assign to any user if that is required for that user. Any questions here, please? Fine. Seems to no questions. So then what we'll do is in tomorrow's session, we can see the process of implementation user creation. We'll create the user and we'll assign these 3 roles, and we'll be submitting some job, and we'll talk about it, what is the purpose we'll be running that job. Once we're done with that, we can log into the system with our own user and we can go with this process. We'll see how to enable the offerings, how to create the project, and we'll go one by one.
Lakshman, like we have a task to assign to the team members.
Yeah.
So we have as discussed on the top. Yeah. So we have discussed as ever. So there is a users here. We are implementation user we are creating. So will that the team member will be the part of the implementation user or employee user?
Any user you can assign the project related any offering or option or a task list or a task to any user. The user should be available in the instance. That's it. Any user. It can be implementation user or employee user. Okay. So you can do that.
So are you going to create a user ID?
Yeah, please.
Are you going to create our user ID or?
Yeah, we'll create our own user. Yep. As a part of this.
Hopefully, you will share the link about the user ID.
Yeah, definitely. See, what I am going to do is, I'll show you how to create our own user. Before that, we need some login, right? When we are working for client Oracle, we will provide some user. Right. However, we get to user from Oracle in the same way, I'll provide one user for you. Okay. From that user, you can log in and you can start creating your own user. The same, I'm going to do it first. Say, for example, we'll have one user called as ABC. With this, we will log in. Then we'll create our own user called as XYZ. The same way, I'm going to use ABC to log into this instance. The same user I will share with you. If the same, if not same, different. Then you can log into the instance and you can create your own user. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Lakshman, if I understood Praveen's question, he was, I think, like, and Praveen, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think, like, also I'm need to understand, like, when you are actually already creating the project, like, on the top, and it says that assign tasks to the team members, then why do we need to do assigned roles on implementation user? Isn't like both are the same thing we're talking about?
Yeah. See, the point here is, I created a project and say the financials offering I'm assigning to user called as Lakshman. Okay. Now the project will be part of FSM. So this guy, for this guy we have to assign the role called as application implementation consultant. Then only that team member will be able to have access to FSM and they can see which task or which offering or which option is associated against their name. Accordingly, the user will start working on the system. I'm assigning, but I have to give the access to the system. That is the reason. Okay, we have to assign the role.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah, just you are just making a note. That's all. You are just keeping the note for which area who is going to work. Okay, we specified, but for them we have to give the access to FSM so that they can see the project. Within the project, for which area they are mapped, they can understand. Then accordingly they can start working. That is the reason. Just we have to assign the role.
Understood. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. So any other questions here, please?
So Lakshman, one more question actually. Yeah. So sometimes, the implementation manager is also a consultant. So in that scenario, can you also assign a implementation manager to the implementation user role?
Yes,
I mean, user actually.
You can assign. That's what simple. Yeah, so which privileges who require, accordingly you can assign the role. That's all. It's very simple.
Okay, it's not strictly to these 3 roles actually.
And one more point here, just that's a very important point here is, say I may assign one offering or option to one consultant, but other consultant will be able to perform the same setups. Okay, Say for example, payables option I may assign to consultant A. Even if that is assigned to consultant A, consultant B will be able to do the setups for A. Okay, there won't be any control. There won't be any control. That is just for information. So that's how it works.
So, which means he can assign that task to himself actually.
Yes, that is also possible.
Okay, fine. Yeah.
See, whatever the assignments you are doing just for information, not for controlling purpose. Whoever have access to FSM, they'll be able to access all the projects. They can work on any project, any setup they can do, irrespective of the task or project or offering or option is assigned to whom. Yep, that's how it works. Not for controlling purpose, just for information and progress tracking. This project definition will be useful. Apart from that, if you are going to do the setups and all from the project, that will give you an option to move the setups from one instance to another instance. There are few setups which mandatorily you have to complete from the project. Outside of the project you cannot do. So these and all we'll understand more detail level once we get into the system. Okay, so for now, if you have any just questions on these or clarification required, please raise that point. We can talk on that.
Lakshman, like FSM, like for the application implementation consultant, if we assign this FSM,
correct.
So that is only part of, suppose that is one piece of my GL setup.
No,
one option.
Everything for all the modules.
Everything. Oh, okay.
Complete. All offerings which are available in the instance. Okay. Full access for entire product. Yeah. Any other questions, please? Fine.
So tomorrow, when you're going to show in the instance logging by your user credentials, we will get the same time, hours to do the same time, or later in the after the training ends up.
No. Same. Like I'll be sharing tomorrow itself. After class, immediately I'll be sharing the same credentials. You can log in with the instance, and you can just test the same what we are going to see in the tomorrow session. Tomorrow we'll start with the system. There is no other information we have to understand. Once we get into the instance, based on the concepts which we are handling, we'll try to understand conceptually. Then we can go ahead. But for tomorrow, we can start with this. Then we can continue to this FSM related process. And there we can understand many other points. Fine.
One generic question.
Sorry?
I have one generic question. How many total options we have available in the, if we look into the like EBS,
close to 30 we have. And here, see, take simple other point also, since you are asking for the number. Say financials Oracle is giving as a one offering. Okay, within this, the primarily whatever the module we have, all will be part of that. Okay, HCM, human capital management, they are giving as a two different offering. The complete solution of HCM, they split it into two parts: workforce management and workforce development. PPM, they are giving as one offering only. When you talk about SCM, procurement, they are giving one separate offering, and inventory part, product management we call, and order management, they are giving as a one offering. See, when you say offering, that can be that may refer group of applications, or it can be some individual process. So how that got solutioned within the Fusion applications, and another point is what is the sequence they follow to come up with that solution into Fusion as a part of development. Based on that, they given as a one offering or multiple offering, even that is some product family related modules. You see just only order management as one offering. You see inventory application as a separate offering. Now inventory we call here as a product management, where they just the product management functionality they introduced in the Fusion. So that's how. But when you talk about financials, the core modules which we treat as financials all are falling under same offering. Okay, that's how we have. So by considering these points, we have around 30 offerings. We'll see that when we start working on the system, everything will able to go through. Okay. So any other questions from anyone, please? Fine, that's all for today. We'll wind up the session for now. We'll connect tomorrow same time.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thanks for attending this session.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lakshman.
Thank you.